You know, the older you get, the more you come to realize exactly how much your parents are just winging it and how much they don't know. When you're a kid, when you're young, you think everything your parents say is right. You think everything they say is gospel, and you listen to everything they say or do because they're your parents. However, as you're getting older, as you get more life experience, as you've lived more life, you start to see a bit of the hypocrisies, the faults, the inconsistencies, the contradictions. And this is mainly because for parents, they feel like they have to know everything, even when they don't necessarily know, just because they're the parent. That's part of the parent-child dynamic. And this is where some people start to butt heads with the parents a little bit. There's some resentment, there's some friction, some disagreements because you're getting wiser. You start to see everything that they were wrong about. But as a parent, I imagine that it's hard to admit to your child that you're wrong. They always have to be right because subconsciously that breaks the parent-child dynamic. But this is how the relationship takes a major hit. There's a lot of disagreements, a lot of resentments deep down inside. And this more so applies to immigrant families and immigrant parents, especially from Eastern Asia, because they come from a culture where everything is based on hierarchy. It's embedded in their culture. It's how they were raised, and it's a lot different from American or Western cultures or families or households. Families from Western cultures or households have a lot better line of communication between parent-child and, just being able to be open and honest with your parents. For immigrant families or parents, or especially Asian cultures, there's no "how's your day? How are you feeling? How's everything? How are you mentally?" Our version of that is "show me your report card. Did you do your homework?" Talking about how are you doing? How are you mentally? And it's funny because I remember the first time I brought back a 3.5, and bro, the reaction I got was like I just committed a crime. And granted, a 3.5 is pretty mediocre, right? But they were like, we gotta get you a tutor, like something's wrong. And then ever since then, if I ever got a 3.5 or even worse, I would have hit that report card. But as far as immigrant parents or Asian parents specifically, because that's what I can speak on, they grew up in a culture that was almost superficial, if you will, because for them, what you are is your social status, your career, your grades, your finances. Like when you get together for family dinners, this is what they ask you about, like this is who you are. This is the main focus, so your parents could brag about you to your other family members because it makes them look good. It's a good reflection on them. Like forget about your happiness, become a doctor so I can brag about it to your aunt. And it becomes a dick measuring contest of look what I created, what's your kid doing? And for a lot of parents, they kind of get wrapped up in the idea that their child is like their personal project. And this is also where a lot of friction and resentments come from, is when parents try to instill what they want into their child. And they almost forget that you have your own desires, beliefs, morals, values, aspirations, and goals in life. They always think they know what's best, even though sometimes they can be wrong. And they have a hard time accepting they're wrong because they can't get over the idea that because they're the authority figure, they can never be wrong. And they can't really accept their child's opinion even if they're right because they don't want to break that parent-child dynamic. I mean, of course, parents are wiser because they have more life experience, they've lived life longer, but times are changing and we don't grow up in the same generation. We have a different set of problems that we have to deal with in the world, that we have to solve. Like for me personally, I'm not gonna lie, my parents are kind of clueless when it comes to the current state of the world and the direction the world is moving in. And this is natural because they grew up in a completely different part of the world during the 70s and 80s, a completely different time era. And as I've gotten older, I've kind of learned to filter out what I can take in from them and what I can just kind of, one ear out the other. But a lot of people can't do that, where they can't really filter out the things they can't take in. They just listen to their parents all the way through. And that's how you end up in your 30s, unhappy, resenting them. Actually, my dad would do this thing a lot where, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this, where they would pull the whole back in my day card, where they would say, oh, back then we didn't have this, we had to go through this, you guys are so lucky, etc., etc., etc. And to a certain degree, they're right, but at the same time, we live in a completely different world. Again, we live in a world where social media and technology is the epicenter of society, and we just deal with a completely different set of problems or issues. There's no point in debating, oh, whose is worse, who has it better. As a matter of fact, I'm sure every single older generation to ever exist has always looked down on the generations to come after. Like for example, our parents' idea of wealth was 9 to 5 till you're 65 and then invest in real estate, buy a house. And obviously nowadays it's not as simple as that. The housing market has inflated tenfold. The education system and college and universities aren't keeping up in the way technology is changing the world. And it's not something your parents can really give you advice on because they don't live in the world we do today. They didn't grow up in our world, just like we didn't grow up in their world. And sometimes you gotta find your own path. Sometimes you gotta go your own way. Sometimes you gotta go your own direction. And again, for parents, it's easy to forget that your child isn't your personal project. They're not slaves to your will. They have their own beliefs, perspectives, goals, ambitions, desires in life. They're not there for you to feel like more of an authority figure, to live vicariously through, or to feel better about what you've created. If any of you guys are parents out there to my 25 to 34 demo, and again, I'm not a parent, so take my words for what you will, but try to hear out your child every now and then. Like, having a genuine, open, honest line of communication is so beneficial for any relationship, whether that's romantic, friendship, parent-child, co-worker, etc. Like, I know I kind of sound like a chick right now, like, communication. But no, having a genuine, open, honest line of communication can do so much for any relationship. And for me personally, I always fantasize about having kids, fantasize about having a daughter, having a son. And the one thing I'd like to do, that I'd hope I can do as a parent, is being able to talk to them about anything. Like, I sometimes imagine myself making fun of my son for having a crush on a girl, but also giving him genuine advice. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I really want that someday. But again, that open line of communication between parent and child is hard for a lot of parents because it breaks the dynamic of, I'm the parent, you're the child, shut up and listen to me. And to be honest, you'd actually be surprised. Kids are a lot smarter than they like to let on. It's something that I learned from working with kids. I used to work with kindergartners, first graders, second graders. Even for me, when I was a kid, I remember I used to play dumb a lot when there was a lot of adults around, or I used to act a lot more oblivious than I actually was. Just because I subconsciously understood that parent-child dynamic, like, I'm the kid, so I would play a lot more dumb than I actually was. Because I understood, like, oh, I'm the kid right now. They're all looking at me. I'm the center of attention. Let me just be more of a kid. Let me just play dumb and like run around. Like, kids are a lot smarter than they let on, don't be fooled. It's just that a lot of times they understand that they're the kid when there's an adult around, so they play into it. Like, kids are actually really inquisitive when it comes to feelings, energies, emotions. Like, they can tell when another kid is sad and then do something to cheer them up while pretending to not know that they're sad. Like, don't let these kids fool you. They like to play dumb and they're a lot smarter than they let on. But yeah, ultimately there's gonna come a point in your life where you're going to have to either respectfully disagree with your parent and make your own decision as it pertains to something important in your life, or you just forever try to appease their desires and quietly hold resentment if they're parents that don't 100% support you. If you do have those parents that are like, we 100% support you no matter what you do, then you're lucky and this doesn't apply to you. There's going to be that point of realization where you see contradictions, hypocrisies, and you see where they're wrong, their faults. And how you move going forward is going to determine most of the relationship. Again, for me, I just learned to filter out what I can or can't take in from my parents. When it comes to esoteric concepts like meaning, fulfillment, self-betterment, becoming the best version of yourself, a lot of my aspirations in life align with these esoteric concepts, and these are things that are completely foreign to my parents. For my Asian viewers, you guys know what I mean. But there came a point in my life where I just had to make that decision for myself to go in the direction that I want to. Even though on the surface level it might seem like you're disagreeing with your parents or what they want from you, in the long run this is actually going to be a lot more beneficial for your relationship, because if you just listen to them, you're going to build resentment. Like, it starts off as disagreements, and then there's friction, and then you build resentments, and then you end up hating them. So doing what you want and paving your own path actually is beneficial for the relationship in the long run. And you just come to that realization where your parents aren't always going to be right, and that's okay. It's okay that they're not always right because they're not perfect. Even if they can't admit to that, even if they can't admit when they're wrong, because they don't want to break the parent-child dynamic. You just gotta understand that for yourself and respectfully disagree. Ultimately understand that you are your own person, you're not a slave to your parents' desires or will, you're not your parents' project. You are your own person, so ultimately live life like you are. Anyways, thank you for listening. I appreciate you. I love you. Make sure you stay true, and I'll talk to you real soon. Peace.